I started riding when I was 8 and I completely fell in love with it. Riding instructor that I used to have years ago, she's brilliant.
Did you put this on yourself that you'd bought the wrong horse, that you shouldn't have made this decision?
And then I had a shutdown. I just thought, I've got to change something.
How did you move forwards with a horse with no balance?
Now, what changes do we need to make in our everyday lives to become better horse owners? Nicky Sharpe is a qualified positive psychology coach and mentor, specialising in helping people to have successful relationships with not only their horses, but themselves too. Nicky hasn't always been this way though. It was her own horse who changed her as a person. And it was Jessie's journey through trauma that inspired Nicky to change the trajectory of her life at the age of 50, leaving behind her corporate job. So how can learning from our tricky or traumatised horses help change the direction of our lives? Let's find out, shall we?
Nicky, welcome to Curious Equestrian.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
Oh, you're so welcome. And Nicky, it's a fascinating dive, this one, because we're starting at the point where you are a non-pro, a non-horse trainer, and as you describe yourself, an average horse owner, like so many of us that have had our lives changed by horses. Can you take us back, before we jump into the world of Jessie, can you take us back to the moment where you first felt a deep connection with horses?
I think that goes right back to childhood. So I was always the kid in the car that would drive past down the motorway and just shout, horses. I'm still that person at 51. There was always a horse in a field somewhere. There always is, isn't there? And I think when I was 8, I got asked by my parents if I wanted a hobby, and I got a choice between horse riding and ballet. I'm not a girly girl, and horse riding won out. It wasn't really a contest. So I started riding when I was 8 and I completely fell in love with it. So it all began from there, really.
And then you also describe in life how along our equestrian journeys, all so different, we often find the horses we need, not the horses that we want. So can you talk us through, at the point of getting Jessie, the horse that was on your bucket list in comparison to Jessie who found you?
Yeah, so I met Jessie 6 weeks after I lost my last mare. So my previous mare, who was the first horse I owned, I was owner number 3 out of 3 owners. I'm still in touch with her last owner. They sold my last mare because their daughter was getting too tall for ponies and she was moving into horses. Otherwise, they'd have kept her. She was confident. She did pony club with her dad. You know, she was all of these great things. She jumped. She did cross country. She hacked. She did dressage. She was a really great get on and go first pony, and she gave me a lot of confidence. And then I lost her, and I found I had this big pony shaped hole in my life, and it's a massive gap to have. And I found Jessie on Preloft, just as I had my previous mare Izzy. I found her on Preloft, and I went to try her. And my riding instructor was supposed to come with me, but she couldn't at the last minute. And she said, "Well, go and have a first visit, and then if you think it's worth going again, we can go for a second visit, and I'll come with you." And then I went, and I used to hack out on a weekend, on a Saturday and Sunday. A few of us used to hack out around the village. That was our weekend thing. So I wanted a horse that I could hack out, do some dressage in the school with, do a little bit of schooling, and just have fun and potter about, really. So that's what I was looking for. That's what I was promised. What I got was a very shut down horse who I think had been on her best behaviour when I went to try her. We walked and trotted nicely up the road. I'd hacked out on my own. I'd never hacked out on my own before. She stopped for the van with the orange flashing lights and was really like not foot perfect, not a foot out of place. Did not even flinch when this van was going past. And so I thought, brilliant, I've got my hacking out pony. My confidence was getting there with, a bit more jumping and dressage and stuff. So brilliant. What I brought home was a very shut down horse who just didn't trust people at all. She was really defensive. She was really formidable. And I spent the first couple of years being absolutely terrified of her. I had my own anxiety as well. I was in a situation at work where I was off sick with work-related stress and anxiety. I'd been off for 5 months. So I wasn't in the best place. My nervous system was absolutely shot. I was at my lowest. I had no self-esteem, no self-worth. Just terrible. A really, with hindsight, awful time to buy a horse. Um, and then I had a shut down mare who would defend herself at all costs, and she meant it. She would rear up, she would bite, she would be very, very difficult, if not impossible, to handle. Um, and I bit off way more than I could chew. So that was the opener.
And how did you feel in that moment, Nicky? Did you feel instant regret? Did you put this on yourself that you'd bought the wrong horse, that you shouldn't have made this decision, as so many do when they end up with a horse that actually they didn't realise was shut down, they didn't realise had trauma, and they didn't realise was in a very different space than what was advertised?
Completely. I was in a position where I'd only owned one horse. I'd ridden for most of my life, but having lessons at a riding school is very different to owning a horse. Um, and people often tell you a few lies to sell a horse. And I'd been told that she was absolutely solid hacking out, a little bit green in the school, but really, really lovely. And when she came out, she was just not that horse. I did blame myself. I did have a lot of regret, but by then I was kind of falling in love with her. I'd got my connection. We'd got a little bit of a relationship going, and albeit not much of one at all. And I thought, I can either sell her and she's going to go back to exactly the same, if not worse, or I can do something about it. I can try and learn something different. And I'm quite stubborn and I like a challenge. So I decided that I would go through, no matter what it took. And at that point, I had no idea. The naivety of not knowing what you're getting into sometimes is the thing that carries you forward, right? You end up doing it and learning so much and growing. But at the time, yeah, no idea, full of regret, thinking, oh my God, what have I done? My riding instructor was the same, was like, what on earth have you done? And then the work began.
The horsey people around us never help in those situations, do they? Whether it's friends or coaches or riding instructors, they always seem to echo the thoughts in our head with that sort of overly critical sort of comments like, what the hell have you done? What were you thinking? And you think, that's what I'm telling myself. So please don't repeat it back to me. Did you find, Nicky, that you wanted words of reassurance and a way forward rather than, the outside noise from people on yards and riding schools and coaches and instructors around you? What was it that you were really seeking at that time, do you think?
I really needed the help and I really needed the support and I wanted that. I was in a place where personally I was in a really dark place. I'd hit rock bottom with the whole work stuff that was going on, which was nothing to do with horses. But you can't leave bits of yourself at the door, at the gate, at the barn. It's like that old saying, wherever you go, there you are. You bring all of yourself to every single situation. And so I brought all of that anxiety and the insecurity of I've bitten off way more than I can chew. I have no idea what I'm doing. And then I started looking for help. And my friend had just been to a Warwick Schiller clinic in Bishop Burton in the August. I think that must have been about 2018. And I'd never heard of him at that point. And so I started looking into him and I started looking at some of his YouTube videos and following him on Facebook and started picking my way through the beginnings of horsemanship. So I did get some help in places, but it was a difficult time.
And we're going to come on to Warwick, but just describe us, as you do so brilliantly in the extract that you sent me, Nicky, your first ride on Jessie. Because I think as horse people, all of us have had a first ride on a horse similar to the one that you experienced, where you've got all these thoughts racing through your head. Just describe that for us.
Yeah, so my riding instructor that I used to have years ago, she's brilliant. She taught me and my old mare. She taught me how to jump, and she got me forward on my dressage. And we did dressage tests together, and she was brilliant. And we tried to work with Jessie in exactly the same way as my old mare, but it was like poles apart. It was chalk and cheese. And the first time I rode her, walking was okay. It was very fast, but it was okay. Trotting, it was like being on the world's worst roller coaster at a million miles an hour. With my teacher Tracy saying, "Sit up, sit back, lean back, it'll be fine." Just the usual. But it was awful, and it turns out she had no balance. So at that point, Jessie couldn't stand still and put her head forward without falling over. She couldn't even do that. She'd not been taught anything. She'd not had an education. She'd been told what to do very firmly and probably not very nicely. I don't know exactly what's happened to her, but there's signs and things that we've done as part of the training where she's come at us and she's reacted, where something bad's happened. So it's but yeah, that felt awful.
Oh, and we can all sort of chuckle to ourselves because we've all been in a similar situation where that we have these nightmare experiences. It feels like a roller coaster. It feels out of control. You've got this trotter, but the trot is, so big you can barely stay in the saddle. But how sad and how traumatic that you've ended up with this beautiful horse who's had such a sad and turbulent past. And there you are trying to pick up the pieces, and yet you haven't yet learned what your horse needs from you. So, Nicky, where did you go at that point? Who did you turn to, and how did you move forwards with a horse with no balance and a lot of sadness in her life?
And so one of my friends at the yard was doing straightness training, so Mariah de Jong's straightness training program, and she'd suggested I look at that and start doing the groundwork with her, and forget about riding for now, which I did. I was quite happy to. She wasn't really in a position to be ridden, so I thought I'll start with the groundwork. I'll take the advice, and my friend was helping me on the yard. And as we moved through the exercises, it became really clear that I just didn't have the relationship with her to even do any of the skill and teach her anything skillful. Um, and even doing Warwick's work, I remember trying to do the crab walk once, and she reared up. I was in tears with someone in the yard going, "Are you okay?" And I was like, "Yes, I'm fine." Massively not fine. And I think what I've learned is unless you're in the right place and you have the right relationship, you can try as many training programs as you like, but none of them will do themselves justice because you're not in the right place and your horse isn't in the right place. So I started off straightness training, and then I went to Warwick, and actually I had to take a massive step back. It was at a point where Warwick was still very much an active part of Facebook and his page, and I messaged him and I said, "I need some help." And I was completely in dire straits. I didn't know what to do. She'd reared up at me. She meant it. I was scared. It was awful. It was just, everything was terrible. And he wrote back to me and he said, "Go back to the beginning. And when you've gone back to the beginning, go back a bit further and do the connection with focus. And if you're scared of her in the field, sit outside the field." And so I took it right back to just standing with her. And it was interesting because, we always talk about down regulation and how horses self-regulate by their licking and chewing. I think the first time I stood in the school with her, I stood there for 90 minutes. It was an hour and a half before she licked and chewed because she was so traumatized and so tight in herself. And it was a very long hour and a half. Whereas now it's, seconds, it's, more normal because I've done the work, but I had to go all the way back. And then, so I'd stopped doing the skillful, trying to build skill. And I found Jane Pike on a Confident Rider podcast. And she was talking to Elsa Sinclair. And the first time I listened to it, I wasn't ready for it because I skipped past it. I went, oh yeah, nice listen, but off, move on. And then about a year later, I came back to it and I found Elsa, and she talked all about the relationship. And so I saved up and I signed up for her confidence course. And I did that in 2021. And I met some really lovely people, and we all had problem horses. You're not there if you've got a great relationship with your horse. It's how to build a relationship, and it's how to build depth rather than skill. So, I mean, we still have a weekly Thursday study group, which started back in 2021. So we all keep in touch and we all support and help each other. But that was really the start of it. And I didn't get past lesson 2 the first time I did that course. I really struggled. And all my videos that I'd sent to Elsa for review as part of the course were all Jessie tanking it down the field towards me, excited, but knowing how to cope with it. It's spilling over into aggression and me being absolutely terrified. And that was probably about 6 weeks worth of videos on this course. And so I carried on with it and did it again and did it again and did it again. So I've done that course about 3 times now. But I revisit the material. Obviously still got that. So without building the relationship, I wouldn't be able to do half of the stuff that I've done.
There's so many things I want to ask you, Nicky. I just want to jump in on the fact that you've mentioned a few times the fear and the terror that you felt in those early months and in that early section of your story. And how often we hear that fear of a horse is the end of the journey. Horses get passed from pillar to post, they get moved on very sadly to someone else in the hope that someone else might be able to cope with them. But actually, should we be reframing that fear and thinking, actually, this is the beginning and this is where we start and this is where the story begins, rather than this is where the horse gets moved on in the industry?
Yeah, I think so, because Jessie just wanted to be loved. And I think all horses want to be loved. We all want to be loved, right? And for me, humans and horses, we're so similar. We're both herd animals. We're both built for connection. And if anything taught us that, COVID did.
Yeah.
From
Yes.
being isolated, everybody just suffering from that. We want connection, and we want to show up as our authentic selves, and we want to be able to have a conversation, just bring our whole selves to the party. And horses are the same, and we should be honouring that, I think, and reframing it in that was Jessie's bid for connection. John Gottman always talks about bids for connection and how he can identify which relationships will fail and which relationships will flourish. So actually, that coming at you and it overspilling into aggression, actually, connection. She's trying to connect, but she doesn't know how. How can we then help them connect? And I think once you get a very different, your outlook changes on it, and your whole kind of it softens. You have a whole softness to your side that you didn't have before. And so if you can pick through it, I think it is just the beginning. I really do.
That's so interesting. And I also love the fact as well, Nicky, that you had horses before. You had a mare before, as you described, that had been loved her whole life and had had very passionate owners that had looked after her. And this was your first experience of trauma. Did you feel like you had to relearn all that you knew about horses when Jessie came along? And do you feel like there's so much more to horse ownership than first meets the eye?
Oh yeah, I had to completely relearn everything. I was brought up. My lessons were in the early 80s. It was very traditional. It was very traditional BHS. You kick on, you get on, and off you go. And that's just how it was. And nobody knew anything. You didn't know anything different. And I had to unpick all that and forget about everything that I knew, because Jessie had had enough dominant leadership in her life to last a lifetime. And if I did try a dominant leadership, I would always be the loser. So I had to look at different things. And actually, if you think about how we want to be treated as people by other people, if you're scared of something, you want someone's support. If you're worried about something, you want someone's support and to talk through it. You don't want to be told off or shouted at, because if that were the case, you wouldn't be friends with those people for long. So you want that connection, and you want to be able to trust that you can show up as your whole self. And actually, by giving Jessie a voice, I let her have an opinion. I want her to have an opinion. And, in the start, it got a lot worse before it got better. And it does. So you have to prepare yourself for that. But it does get better. And the shouts eventually turn to whispers, because they know that they can talk to you. They know that they can go, I'm worried about this. And you can go, that's fine, I've got it. Whereas if I shouted and, pulled on her reins and went, no, doing it my way, it just wouldn't work. So you do have to change your approach. And I think there's such a lot more to horse ownership than it being another thing to do, or, the rider being in complete control, the owner being in complete control. It's about it being an equal partnership where you both have a voice. You're part of a herd of two at the end of the day. So if you can try and mirror what would be going on in a herd, which is a lot of the stuff I learned from Elsa, you can be a friend or a leader. But I think it's got to be an equal.
And what I love, Nicky, is that you credit your trainers and your coaches along the way, the people that helped you change your mindset and helped you build your confidence. Why do you think you were drawn to these particular mentors, and who was a real turning point for you?
I think I've always been quite empathic, and I am quite an intuitive person anyway. And I think the more work I did on myself, the more I realised that I want that connection and I want the relationship. That's the important thing. The riding for me is almost secondary. And Elsa Sinclair was a huge, and still is. And going to one of her clinics and, speaking with and learning with her it's such an eye-opener, because you start learning all these really small things, and you start learning how to communicate with your horse and how to read them and how to just spend time with them. It's not just about riding. There are times when I will make time once a week to just go and hang out, and we'll stand there and I won't ask anything of Jessie. And if she's having a sleep in the afternoon, I'll go and sit down with her and we'll have a snooze for 20 minutes. I'm now at the point where if she's lying down, I can go in and lie down with her. And so by working on the relationship, you build up that trust. So when you are riding, you've got more control, because you're working together as a partnership. You've got the relationship to control, rather than a bit or a heavier bit or a martin, or an extra, an extra pulled bridle on, that's bitless or whatever. You're not using those tools. You've got the relationship, which is your biggest tool.
How important for you is that standing still, that finding the stillness in the moment with the horse, instead of just focusing on the training, the achievements, the progress in that sense?
I think it's really important. It is really important for me. Like I say, I try and split my week up into schooling, packing, chilling out, letting her be a pony, and so I'm doing freedom-based training in the field with her and just wandering around, and she'll tell me when it's time to go. And sometimes, yesterday, for example, she came over to see me. As soon as I got there, I got a big whinny and she came over to see me, and then she carried on eating. And I knew it was time to go because she had a massive blowout and just released. And I was like, yeah, that's. But I think the horse appreciates it. I think Jessie definitely appreciates it, because you're not asking anything of them. You're not saying, oh, let's ride today. Let's go over some poles. Let's do jump. Whatever it is that you want to do. You're just being there together with them. And I think that connection is very important for them too. They seek connection, and they seek connection from their owners as well as their horses that are around.
myself and my mum, with our rescue mare called Whinnie, she came to us traumatized and having had a horrendous background, which we think included beatings and being tethered and violence against her. And we found exactly that the real bond came from us just being with Winnie out in the field and not asking anything from her. And it's really interesting that, you know, when you do reach out to sort of instructors locally for help, which is your sort of automatic ingrained response, isn't it? Being an equestrian from a child like you and myself as well, you think I must head to the professionals in the local area. And, you know, they will give a lot of practical advice, you know, try doing this, try doing that, incorporate this exercise. But actually, it's going and just standing with your horse in the field where you start making major breakthroughs. And I find it quite interesting that in our own lives with our family and friends, we don't focus on the achievements, do we? That we do with our friends and family. We don't focus on what we've done together, you know, what we might have achieved in the gym or at work with our colleagues. The bonds are made when we're there for each other. It might be when you're there as a, you know, as a listening ear, and you might not say anything to your friend, but you're listening to their troubles, or you're there to comfort them and give them a big hug when they're struggling with something at work. That's what builds the relationship and the bonds. So why do you think, Nicky, we're all still so surprised all these years later that actually the key to building a relationship with our horse is in fact the things that build relationships with other humans?
I think, I think, to be honest, it's the not joining the dots. It's not really realizing just how similar horses and humans are.
Mm.
You know, being built for connection, don't like being on our own. COVID, when everybody was isolated, people who lived on their own, the mental health issues that caused was terrible and still is still ongoing. And you isolate a horse, they're herd animals. They're
Yeah.
built for connection. They're built for congruence and authenticity. So you know what it's like if I worked somewhere once where I had a boss and I never knew which version of him was going to show up on any given day. And it didn't build trust. It didn't build security because you were on eggshells thinking, what version am I going to get today? And horses are exactly the same. So if you're coming from a place where I was of like high anxiety, low self-worth, low confidence, your nervous system's going to reflect that. And because horses read your energy, they're going to be worried.
Mm.
They like confidence, congruence. They want to know that you're showing up as who you really are, and all of you on that given day. So that unsettles them. So I think it's if if more people kind of attributed horses and humans as exactly the same, they just don't have the prefrontal cortex of decision making that humans do. But the rest of the nervous system is exactly the same.
Mm.
And so they have concerns. And if you put ours and theirs together, it can be a bit of a mismatch and it can end in absolute disaster. But if you escalate and escalate and escalate, you know what it's like if you have an argument with someone and you carry on escalating, it just gets worse. And it's the same for horses. So I think it's that understanding that we're not so different.
Mm. And I love that also you talk about applying all aspects of your life to your horsemanship, looking at where you are in your life as you head to the yard or the field, and knowing that actually from day to day we are all so different, aren't we? Even though we're the same core person, one day we might be super stressed because of work, another day we might be nice and relaxed, another day we might be really upset because of something that's happened in the family. And actually we need to manage that as we head out to join our horse who doesn't know what's going on in our private lives. How do you think we can get better? And how have you applied that in your life, Nicky? Because you've had a really turbulent time. You're someone who's dealt with anxiety and issues at work. How did you cope in those situations and learn to manage those feelings around Jessie?
Yeah, I think I started off at my very lowest. I remember looking on the internet for free stuff because I had no money. I didn't really know where to start, so I Googled and I found some breath work. It was free breath work. and it was some free meditation. And I thought, I'll try that. I was when you're at the point where you just try anything, and it was free, so I had nothing to lose. So I tried doing that, and I started with that, and I felt better. It wasn't a magic wand. I didn't suddenly go, oh, I'm all fixed. This is great, because there are no quick hacks like that in life, I found. But I started doing it, and then I found the Headspace app, and I paid for the subscription, and I did that as many days. Some days I missed. Some days I felt so terrible I didn't do it. And I think 1 year, probably about 2 years after that, I did a full year every day. But it was hard. And now, cut to 2025, and I meditate every day. It's part of who I am. But it didn't start like that. So I started meditating, and I think I started looking at the foundations of how I live. So what my sleep was like, what I was eating, what I was drinking, how much I used my phone, and what impacts I was exercising, what my quiet time was like, how much overthinking I did, and for me, alcohol was a big part of me overthinking. It was huge. It would become completely irrational. And the more my brain changed, the more I drank. So, not that I was a big drinker, but even just 3 or 4 on the weekend would make me just think. So I started looking at those foundations of what I was doing, and making small changes, because at that point that was all I could cope with. It wasn't about making big grand sweeping statements. And you see these influencers that get up at 4 in the morning and meditate for 2 hours and journal for an hour and then go on a 2-hour hike, and that's just not how life is. It's unrealistic. So if you can, start by meditating for just even maybe 1 minute a day, if that's what you, because when you start, your head is all over the place. There is no quiet time. Your head's just in overdrive, and you think about the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. So, but if you make a very small start, like I did, I think it makes a real difference.
Breaking it down. You're so right, because when you hear breath work and meditation, I think we all get different images conjured in our minds, don't we? Of these sort of quite glamorous and unrealistic shots of people spending large chunks of their day zoned out, in a beautiful setting. And it is really difficult to incorporate that in our very busy and stressful lives, particularly if it's something that we're all a bit scared of and actually we want to avoid. It also reminds me, I was watching a popular daytime program the other day, shall we say, and they were talking about building in squats to your daily routine for core strength and mental health. And they cut to a shot of a gym bod on a beach doing a weighted squat against a rock, and they said, oh yeah, here's a great example of how you can incorporate wall squats into your daily routine. And I thought, oh, what, in the middle of a beach in Barbados on the side of a rock like a mermaid sort of thing? We all don't look like that when we're trying to start squatting for our mental health. And it reminds me of that when people say, start taking deep breaths and start meditating to become a better equestrian. But as you put it, actually starting with 1 minute, we can all try something for a minute a day, can't we? And it makes it that bit more bearable. And actually, it makes it a bit more realistic, because we can all try and do something for a minute. But when you're trying to do a meditation for 10 minutes, as I know, all these thoughts come swarming in. How, Nicky, did you build it into a day with a horse and, a job and trying to juggle everything else?
Well, I fitted it into my morning routine. So when I say morning routine, get up, make a cup of tea, feed my cats, and then get dressed, get ready for work. 10 minutes I started off with like 10 minutes, and I could do that. Some mornings I couldn't, but what the trick, I didn't beat myself up about it. I was just like, you know what, I've got to be out the door, I've got to be at work. I was leaving work at that point at like 7:30 in the morning. So if you're leaving that early, you can't fit everything in. You've got to be realistic, kind to yourself, and give yourself the grace of, do you know what, I did it yesterday and that's okay. And if you miss it today, well, I'll come back to it tomorrow. And it's finding the right time for you. So mornings were the right time for me, but it isn't always, it's not going to suit, what suits me isn't going to suit the next person. So it's finding the right time for you. Mine was feed cats, have a cup of tea, meditate, go and get ready for work. And that works for me. So it's finding the right time for you, I think, and not beating yourself up if you miss a day, because nobody's perfect. You know, I meditate every day now, but I never used to. And I've started journaling, but I don't meditate. I don't journal every day. I forgot yesterday, if I'm going to be honest, because I had a really busy day. And then I thought, actually, I'm okay today. I'm fine with it. So, you know, it's about giving yourself the grace to make those, see what small changes you can make in your life.
Mm.
And, you know, when I say really small, things that you don't even notice. So another example that I wanted to get better sleep. And I was guilty, like so many people, of taking the phone to bed and saying, I'm going to bed now, scrolling for 2 hours, and
Oh,
then finally get, yeah, all being there, right?
guilty as charged.
Yeah. Same. And you'd end up, instead of going to sleep at about 9:30, you'd be going to sleep at about 11:30 because you'd find something fun on YouTube or Insta or Facebook, you know, and that impacts on your sleep. So if you're getting less sleep, you're waking up feeling tired, you're not at your best the next day. So last year, I just thought, I've got to change something. So I bought an alarm clock, because the usual excuse is, but I need my phone because it's got my alarm on it.
Mm.
And everyone, including me, guilty as charged, says, but I need my alarm clock because otherwise I won't get up. So I bought an alarm clock. I found the cheapest, nicest looking one I could find. I think it was about 10 quid. And it's got a ringer on it, but it has no volume button. So my cat sleeps on the bed, and for the first 3 months, it looked like she was being shot out of a cannon every time this blooming alarm went off, because it was so loud.
Oh,
It's hilarious. So 8 kilos of cat shooting off the bed at 6 a.m.
That'll wake you up,
But
won't it? If nothing else, the cat will wake you up.
exactly, yeah, volume buttons. So actually, it made me get up, because I had no phone there, because my phone lives downstairs now in the kitchen when I go to bed. And it, and at first I was like, but I need my phone. And I was like, no, try it, just try it. And I've been a year now with no phone in the bedroom, where I have better sleep, I wake up feeling more energized, and I have a better day. All one little change that nobody knows about unless I tell them. You know, so it's really, really small things like that that fit into your life that can make a really big difference.
Nicky, how awful is this? I just thought, oh, what a good idea. I could put my phone downstairs on charge, get the alarm clock like you've instructed us to do. And my first thought was, yeah, that will help me get up, because I'll be so excited to go and check my phone in the kitchen to see what notifications I've got, because I'll have been without it all night. How awful is that? I realised the other day, because I've got a little online shop, Etsy shop with my mum, that helps us run our little animal sanctuary. And often in the night, even just stirring from sleep, I'll hear like buzz, buzz. And I know that consciously, even though I'm sleeping, like as I'm coming to, as hearing that vibration, I'll think, oh, I hope that's a sale in the shop. And then I'll go back to sleep. But actually, how awful that I'm having those emotions and those feelings mid sleep, and it's breaking me awake. And then I'm going back to sleep when I should be at peace and at rest, and not thinking, oh, I hope it's this, I hope it's that. So actually, I'm thinking I should put my phone downstairs as well. But guilty as charged, I'm thinking, oh, that'll be an extra incentive to get me downstairs in the morning, instead of hitting snooze on my iPhone, checking my notifications and going back to sleep. Dreadful, isn't
And
it, the way
maybe,
we're wired now?
yeah, but phones are designed to sell. Where they've made phones, iPhones, or the phones are available, but they've made phones so they're addictive, so you use them more, so they are attractive. And actually, it's not about breaking up with your phone completely. It's about using it mindfully. But it's a lot about getting more sleep, so your brain has a chance to process and shut down and do the it's supposed to do while you're asleep. So it's making small changes like that that actually then regulate your nervous system, because you're not getting that fast dopamine hit when you're looking at your phone constantly.
Oh gosh.
And then
Nikki, can you
which
snooze an old-fashioned alarm? I can't believe I'm asking this. Can you snooze it?
you can switch it off.
But can you turn it off? When you turn it off in the morning, if you went back to sleep, would you then oversleep? Can you hit snooze and it'll
Yes.
wake you up again? Can you put it
Not
on
with
a
my base.
delay? No.
I bought a very, very
There's even more incentive to get up in the morning. It's one chance and one time only to get up as well. Oh my gosh.
you get used to it. It does feel a little bit weird to start off with, and it feels a bit like,
Yeah.
the
Gosh.
effects of it. Actually, because I liked the way I felt, I loved the way I felt when I woke up the next day. And so actually that helped me initially cut down on what I drink, on my alcohol consumption. And now I don't drink at all because I really like the way I feel when I don't. I get more done in my day, I show up better for Jessie, and I can problem solve more when I'm with her, when things don't go quite according to plan. And I can think more, because we always go down the yard with a plan A. I'm going to ride my horse there. I'm going to jump or hack out. We always go to the yard to see our horses with a plan. But I think what we do is when we see our horse and look at the horse we've got today is think, might need to change my plan. Some people just plough on with the same plan, irrespective. I'm just going to do this today and you're going to do it and we're going to be fine. And that's when it can get into a bit of trouble. That's when you might not have a great riding session, or the horse might not be feeling it, and so I always try and go up with a plan B, and sometimes I'll need to flex it to a plan C, because if I go up and Jessie's in season and I get pinned ears, then I know I'm not riding.
You were reading my mind. I was just thinking, and with us mare owners, we should be more flexible. It's not really a case of do we need, it's not really a question, do we need to be more flexible mares? Yes, we do need to be more flexible with our mares, because I don't know about you, but on the first day of the time of the month of our periods, I don't want to go and run 5k or go and swim 30 lengths in the pool or go and do a circuit session in the gym. No, thank you very much. I'll be on the sofa, I'll do my day of work, I'll be on the sofa with a hot water bottle, some comfort food and my favourite box set on TV. I will not be in the gym. So actually, if our mare is telling us they've got stomach cramps, they feel a bit awful and they're moody and they don't want to do, jumping, poles, lunging, a session in the school, I'm with you, girl. We should be actually working with our mares, shouldn't we? And incorporating that flexibility into their sessions and our sessions with our horses.
Yeah, and it's back to that, true partnership. It's, if I go up to the yard and it's like the first season of the year is horrific.
Yeah.
And Jessie, and she is super sensitive, and I know that, like, I'm not putting a saddle on a girth on you today. No. So sometimes I'll just stand and hang out or chill or do a little bit of freedom-based training in the stable, or just sometimes she just won't want me there. So I'll just do what I need to do and then go and leave her to it. And actually, sometimes that's the best thing to do. But we talk to each other. I've learned how to read her, and she's learned how to talk to me without shouting, and it works. And I think if you form that true partnership with your horse, especially with mares, because they can be super sensitive, then it will really pay dividends when you are riding. It really will. You'll have the best time, because I ride bitless, and I have a few people come up and go, "Oh, you've got really great control, even though she's bitless." And I'm like, it's the relationship. It's all about the relationship.
And Nikki, I like how you talk about your whole lifestyle having changed. And I want you to talk to us a bit more about that. But we so often on the podcast and, to professional equestrians, coaches, trainers, they will talk about the whole horse approach, looking at the horse's physical health, mental health, emotions, looking at the bond and relationship. And I love that you're also talking about the whole human approach. You've cut out drinking alcohol because it made you feel awful at the weekend and it brought out a different side of you. You're talking about buying an old-fashioned alarm clocking and getting a better night's sleep. You are looking at all aspects of being a human to help improve your horse's life. Do you think this is something we all need to do? We need to be more brutally honest about the lives we're leading to be better horse friends, horse leaders, horse owners.
Yeah, I so, and it's, especially in today's society, it's we've got all this stuff on Instagram. We compare ourselves with each other, with other people, and it can lead to like real anxiety, and then just life getting in the way. Things happen at work, things happen in families. You know, you can have so much happen in one day, and it'll be the last thing, the one last straw. Warwick calls it his 13th rabbit, but it'll be something really tiny, like you're standing on your foot up and breaking it, or it'll be something really insignificant that'll push you over the edge. And it's all of that. And sometimes we can have stuff happen to us that we just push down because it's too hard to deal with, but it's got to come out somewhere. And sometimes, it might come out in you shouting at your horse because they've not done what you wanted them to do, or you getting really frustrated with someone in a supermarket, for example, because they've just ran the trolley. It's it's bringing your nervous system back to the adaptive way it's been designed to be, so you don't get stuck in that stress mode. Because if you get stuck in that stress mode, it impacts on your sleep, on how you show up, what you eat, what you drink, all of that stuff. And then it starts impacting on your horse because, like I said earlier, they read your energy. So if they're reading nervous energy, they're looking to you to be the confident person, the confident part of their herd. And if they're they'll be like, what's going on, what's wrong, I need to be nervous if you're nervous. And they do. So I think it's really important to look at the foundations of how you show up, and it's all really simple stuff that you can look at, that you can make changes to, all small stuff, and it's free.
Yeah, it's so interesting, isn't it? And so often we can actually apply this to all aspects of our life in terms of our friends, our family, our colleagues. They're looking for someone who's reliable and consistent and confident and happy. If anyone is snappy in our lives and inconsistent and anxious, and that's not someone we feel, deep inside that we can rely on in those moments. We'll want to kind of lean towards the people that offer us safety in our lives and security. So it's amazing, isn't it, how we can copy and paste all of this from our family to our friends to our colleagues to our horses, and actually making us better humans and better people in all aspects of our life. And so often I'll think that with my mare, if I'm uptight about something that's going on in my private life, or if I'm worried about something, it will always come out in how I'm behaving with my mare. It might be that I am a bit quiet and she's thinking, hang on a second, Anna's normally very bubbly and warm and welcoming at the fence. Why is suddenly Anna all uptight and quiet? And she'll sort of look at me and I'll realise, hang on a second, I'm now bringing this energy that I should have left in the car. I should have left behind me, and now my mare is picking up on this. So it is a great reminder, but we need to be listening. Nicky, for those thinking, gosh, I can be snappy, I can be uptight, I can be nervous, but they don't know what to do about it. How can they be in a place now where they can face all of this and make changes? Because you did mention earlier, you have to be in the right timing and the right space to actually take it on board and be ready for all of this.
Yeah, I think, well, I mean, I've spent years mentoring and coaching in my day job. So I've worked in the energy industry for about 28 years, and I've spent a lot of that coaching and mentoring. Um, and Jessie is actually what made me decide to become a coach and start my own business. And what I say to my clients and what I help them with is, look at your foundations. There's 7 key foundations to look at, which are your sleep, your diet, exercise, your solitude and quiet time, your relationship with alcohol, your relationship with your phone, regular connection with others. And what you can do is score them out of, on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being terrible, 10 being brilliant. How are they all? And then think about what could you to move it up just one score, even if you pick one of them. So pick nutritious diet, for example. I score a 4. What can I do to get it up to a 5? I can drink more water. I can substitute fizzy pop for water, or I can eat more fruit, or it's one thing that's really easy to change that can fit in with your lifestyle that you know that is you can keep up. And also think about what worst days. So I like to go for a walk every day. On my best day, I'll go for a walk for say maybe an hour and a half. We've got Bradgate Park near us in the Midlands, and it's beautiful. It's 800 acres. It's got deer. It's really lovely.
Oh, wow.
I'll go off and do that with a friend. But on my worst day, I'm not necessarily going to feel like I can do that or want to do that. And sometimes I walk around the block. Sometimes I'll just put the bin out at the end of the garden. But I've been out and I've got some fresh air. So it's thinking about what can you do on your worst day that's easy to keep up, and then you start building the habit.
That's really interesting, looking at your worst day. And actually, a lot of what you're saying, Nicky, means we have to be so honest with ourselves in order to start pushing forward. And we need to know our failings and what we're doing wrong, and look harshly with a critical eye on our lives and think, hang on a second, there is room for improvement. Because I think we can all be very guilty of being a bit arrogant or a bit defensive and thinking, oh, but I actually don't really have much of a problem. Oh, I'm just tired. Da, da, da. Oh, work's just getting the better of me, and pushing it all to one side and ploughing on. Is that what you had to do to break it down and to get to the place where you're in now, where you'd had this awful, terrible time and you'd been signed off work, to the place where you're now a coach and a life coach to people with horses? What do you think was that transition? What was that healing point for you?
I think just being kind to myself, first and foremost, because there are days when when you slip up, when you don't do something, but it doesn't mean that it's a complete disaster. It's like if you're on a diet, you have a couple of digestive biscuits and a couple of chocolate digestives. It doesn't mean it's the whole diet shot. It means you just pick yourself back up and go the next day, and flexing with it. If you know you've got a really time at work and you've got your horse to do and you're having a really difficult time at home, then you might not be able to do that. All 3 days of couch to 5K, for example. You walk, and that's okay because you're doing something. I think if you can look at where you're at, and do that scale scoring of 1 to 10, and then pick the thing that feels most comfortable for you. So I've had clients do this. This is what I do with all my clients. We start off and I get them to score all their foundations, and I ask them what they want to start with. And I've had clients, say, I'm not touching that one. I'm not going near that one. And usually it's the relationship with alcohol. No, I'm not touching that. Or the phone. I want to leave that. And we'll start, or exercise or something else. But what you find after a few, and it's always client led, is that they will come back to the ones that they said they weren't going to touch. And they will start making it. They've already started feeling better just by going out for a walk every day. And it doesn't matter how long that walk. If you go for a walk and the trick is to go without listening to any music, no podcasts, no headphones, no phone, just you and your thoughts and nature and the fresh air, or, round the block. And that's when your brain will process stuff. That's when you'll come up with ideas, working things through in your head. And that's when you start feeling better.
And of course,
If you
that's
block
the
it all
scary
out,
bit, isn't it? That's the scary bit, because the music and the podcast block out a lot of noise that we're all running from, whether it be our own past traumas or something difficult that we don't want to think about. So that's the point where it can get a bit scary. But as you say, that's where also the light can come in, and the ideas and the motivation and the inspiration. Also, there's room for that to come in. So you have to kind of be flexible, I guess, and be willing to have a bit of the scary stuff come forward, but knowing that there will be plenty of good as well at the same time.
Absolutely, because on the other side of that, you'll feel you'll feel amazing. You'll feel one hell of a lot better. And it's like, Stoic philosophy says the only way through. You can't go round something. You have to go through it, and you have to deal with it. It's never as bad as you think it's going to be. Going for a walk and starting to meditate, the noise does quieten down. And the more you do it, you become more rational. You're able to problem solve. Your kind of peripheral vision gets broader. You can see more things. You broaden out your outlook. Whereas if you're anxious and always thinking negatively, you're really narrow focused. Whereas if you start being more optimistic and walking, and all of this adds to it, then your nervous system settles, therefore so does your horse, and you end up with a better relationship with yourself and them and the people around you. It's got a knock-on effect to everything, really.
And Nicky, you've talked us through all these different changes that you've implemented in your life, but how is Jessie now, 7 years on? How is her trauma? What is she like now as your companion and equine friend? And where are you both at in your journey?
Well, she's changed such a lot, and it was really nice, actually. We had someone new at the yard last week who met Jessie for the first time, and she said she's so lovely, she's so soft, she's got such a soft face. And I was really proud of her, because she's all the work we've done. I get a Whinnie at the barn every day. Well, most days, unless she's stuffing her face with hay, then maybe not, but most days I do. And we have this deal where she's a pony in the mornings, so I won't ask her to do anything in the mornings. She can go out in her field and do whatever, and in the afternoons and the evenings we mix it up, and we'll either ride or chill or hang out. And she is so lovely. She's just got the nicest temperament. She does sometimes tell me when I've overstepped it, but she tells me in a nice way. She doesn't shout. She doesn't come at me anymore. There is still a little bit of the trauma there, and I think that some of that will stay with her. So, for example, I had a riding lesson in February, and it was cold, and my teacher had gloves on, and she has a bit of a problem with black gloves. She came, so we think that at some point, because she also has a bit of a problem with people stood in front of her, and I think at some point somebody stood in front of her with black gloves has not been very nice to her. But she loves our lessons. We have lessons now. We've started hacking out on our own, which is a really massive thing for both of us. And last week the school set up a dressage arena for sort of e-dressage, and we were all people could enter if they wanted to. And I thought, I'll just have a bit of a play. And she was awesome. She loved it. And she was really great. So we're doing really well with our riding. I mean, it helps that we've got a really nice chilled out garden. Everybody on there is so supportive. And Jessie loves it. So
and
she's
no
got her
more roller
friends.
coaster trots.
Well, we haven't trotted for a while because we've been I've such a long balance in it. We've done a lot of groundwork.
Oh, good.
And actually, we're taking her trotting. So we were ready in November, but her saddle wasn't quite right, so I had to get that checked and get that sorted. And now that's all sorted, we can get going again. So we'll be trotting shortly, hopefully. And but I want to make it a good experience for her, and to keep it under threshold so she doesn't get stressed out. There are times when she does get a bit stressy, but she doesn't bolt off or anything. She just stands there and waits. And I reassure her, and we carry on.
And that is life, isn't it? For us humans and our horses, there will be stresses. And actually, for anyone, horse or human, that's been through something traumatic, there will always be little parts of that trauma within the horse or within the human. And I think that's totally natural, isn't it? As something that we all just have to work through, whether we've got 2 legs or 4 legs. So, just amazing to hear how far you've come, Nicky, and all that you've put in place in your life and within your relationship. Would you say that you are both healed from what you've been through together now?
I think so. I think we've been on a similar journey. And, we've also been doing the Masterson method with her. for the last 5 years. And that's helped both of us. It also works on people amazingly well. So I get a lot out of those sessions as well. And I think we have both healed
What is the
together, which
Masterson's method, Nicky? Quickly run us through.
quickly. So Jim Masterson created the method, and it's working with the horse and responding to what they're telling you in terms of body work. So it's very, very gentle, but it releases layers of trauma, like taking off layers of an onion. It releases the trauma and works in a really gentle way with them rather than something that happens to them. So and it's been amazing for her. And so she's just awesome.
Oh, what an amazing story, Nicky, you know, from that beginning, all that worry and that fear, and now such joy and pride and peace in your face with, you know, what you've both experienced together. And thank you so much for coming on and sharing your journey with us. It's been so insightful and it's really made me laugh at points. And I'm definitely going to get an old-fashioned alarm clock to help me with my early equestrian mornings. So thank you so much. Nicky, for those listening who want to come along on the journey with you and maybe ask you some questions about your coaching, how can they find you?
They can find me on Facebook. So I have a public page, Nicky Sharpe. I'm also on LinkedIn. And I will be having a website which is coming soon. So, but anyone can DM me. So yeah, please get in touch if you want to know more.
Well, thank you so much, Nicky. You're going to stick around and come into our members zone to answer a few listener questions.
That's great. Thanks ever so much.
Thank you so much for listening to and watching Curious Equestrian. If you enjoyed this episode, please don't forget to subscribe to us on YouTube so that you don't miss an episode and all that's coming your way, or you can subscribe to us on whatever podcast platform you listen. If you could leave us a review on Apple Podcasts, that would really help us to find lots more lovely listeners. And you can also follow us on Instagram @Curious Equestrian Podcast. We'll see you next time.